We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we are very much smack dab in the middle of, well, almost in the middle of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, because we are covering episodes 2 and 3 this week, which means if you have not yet watched both episodes, because they had a special doubleheader this week, please make sure that you do. We'll be discussing both in pretty high detail. So this is your verbal spoiler warning. Make sure that you go back, have both of those episodes under your belt, and then come back to listen to our episode or watch, and we'll go from there. But Katie, since we've got 2 episodes to talk about, I'm going to let you go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of just go with what I literally just told T before we start recording. I think when I was watching them, very enjoyable. Like they were interesting. I was intrigued. I was in the show. I do think after the fact, I kind of was like, oh, those were kind of forgettable. They didn't have the same, like, at least in my opinion, they didn't have the same, like, whoa moments of the first episode, especially at the end of the first episode where it really left off like, oh my gosh. I don't feel like that kind of happened here on either of the episodes, which is kind of annoying in its own way, because I think you do have the potential when you're doing a week by week release to leave off on, I don't want to say a cliffhanger, but like on a moment.
Yeah.
And I do think Marvel, for the most part, does do that in a lot of its shows. And I think especially with this show, or at least the ones that they do a weekly release with. And I think especially with this show, there's a lot of different areas which you can do it. I think there's always potential for it. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, like, I'm not going to lie, I don't super remember the episodes, which kind of was annoying to me because I was like, I know I enjoyed watching them, but like, I kind of wanted a little bit more. I do think we're kind of in that rising action part of the story. We are definitely still chugging away towards what will eventually be the climax. And maybe that's a little bit where we're stuck right now, and maybe that's why I'm a little stuck. It's like the beginning 100 pages of a book 9 times out of 10 is not going to be the part that draws you the most in. It's just getting you to the next 100, if you will. So maybe that's it, and now we have to stop. It's kind of like, but they were still good episodes. I still enjoyed them. I am glad they released them together. I will say that at this point, like, it's, I forget what show they just did that with once again, and we both were like, yeah, thank God they did that, because that had only been, I think it was Wonder Man with the Doorman episode or something. No, that dropped all at once. Yeah. What show was that?
Honestly, I think that what you're thinking of was Daredevil when they did the bank episode. And it was like, I think they did the bank episode in another episode.
Yeah, they doubled them up randomly, and we were like, why would you do that? And then, yes, you're right, because I remember us saying, thank God they did that, because if that had been the only episode we had, that would have been really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, I had very similar feelings. I remember even watching episode 3 and being like, what just happened in episode 2? And like, it's, again, like, it's good. It's enjoyable to watch. But I feel like I love the way you said it, like the rising action. We're in that like messy middle where it's like you're still kind of, you don't have maybe the fanfare, the gravitas, the anticipation of a season premiere. And I think they put a lot of really good elements in the premiere to make it super, super engaging. But yet we're still in episodes 2 and 3 very much building up and still like setting up the things that are going to be, what I'm expecting to be crazy and like super fun and things we're going to love to talk about in the rest of the season. And I think unfortunately it's just like these 2 episodes had to do a lot of that heavy lifting.
Featuring Gambit.
He has to patrol and make sure his mom's okay.
We have to make sure we're safe over here. Anything could happen at all times. I saw him pop up and I was like, all right.
What's an episode without a Gam cameo?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I think you're right. I think, it is good to put these 2 together because you're kind of just like condensing in 1 week. Okay, here's a lot of things being set up. I think, there were elements that I really liked. I liked that we got Angela back and we're starting to see her, maybe get ready to take on the mantle and those pieces. I like that we're getting more with Kirsten and like the legal angle of things, that we got Jack. There were definitely some great pieces. I mean, when he's going into the Red Hook, it's like a multi-use space in the worst kind of way. It's a jail. It's a weapons store. I'm sure they're doing 1,000 illegal things there. When he goes in there and, gets everybody out of those cages, that's such a powerful scene. It's really cool to see Swordsman there and the new White Tiger working with Daredevil. And you're like, oh, okay. Like this is a little mini team up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that also being said, the one thing that I kept coming back to in my head was like, you set up the Bullseye Daredevil kind of like hesitant cooperation in episode 1. Not that they were even talking, but the idea of like them communicating with one another. You see in episode 2 when Matt's talking to Karen, she's like, he killed Foggy, and she has very strong feelings, rightfully so. And Matt's kind of like, well, yeah, but and you start to see that.
Right.
I am surprised that by the end of episode 3, we weren't getting a little bit more of Bullseye even than what we got, and maybe even a little bit more communication between the 2 of them, because I feel like there was a lot of conversation and hype around this season, especially as it relates to like those 2 and their super complicated and like multifaceted I hate you but I'm gonna have to work with you relationship.
Right. Yeah, I think I struggled because I believe it was episode 2 that we do see him, right? Like that's the hospital moment where he kills some of the anti-vigilante task force men in the elevators. We see him kind of stalking Vanessa. This is happening in episode 2, and I think I wasn't necessarily mad about him and Matt not so much engaging with each other, more than I was mad that by episode 3, gone. Like, yeah. I just was like, hold on. I'm okay watching him kind of work in the background a little bit and do his thing on the side. And we're kind of seeing him do like this nitty gritty under like the same thing Matt's doing, just from a different perspective, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. I also really liked, like, okay, this is going to sound messed up, but like, I was really hoping he was going to take out Vanessa early.
I had the exact opposite reaction.
Oh,
no, we'll get to that because I had very strong feelings about that.
Well, I actually am. No, here's the thing. The reason I wanted it to happen early was, one, shock factor of it, because I think there's a lot that comes to that. I also think it's a big round, like it's a big full circle moment when she's really the one who kind of brought him back.
Right.
And now here he is going to kill her. I think that would be perfection. But I also think I don't really love watching or knowing that half of this is going to be him stalking her, because I think I would rather kind of let that plot line have the effects I know that plot line's going to have and have him keep moving. And I think if Kingpin is at such a precipice right now that if he lost Vanessa, I think he would absolutely go belly up. Like, I think he would go crazy. And we see he's at this place where he's talking to Vanessa about, what else is there for us to take? What's next?
Yeah.
And I truly think if he lost her completely, I think that would just blow this wide open in a way that I think would be the craziest thing to do in the middle of a season.
I mean, I hear you. I have so many thoughts to this. First, I have to like smile every time I think about Bullseye because he's just like so there was an interview with oh my gosh, Charlie and Vincent, and they were talking about how utterly delusional Bullseye is. So now every time he comes on the screen, I just kind of have to chuckle because this man is just living in his own world. Like he has his own perception on reality. So he just makes me chuckle, even though he's like totally, you know, a scary dude. He just, I don't know,
I love
something
him.
about, I love him. I just think he's so entertaining. And I also love one of the things just cinematically that they do with him every time he comes on the screen. We go from the red hue of Daredevil to the blue hue of Bullseye. I love that. I love that they kept that consistent from season 1. But yeah, I think taking it back to the conversation about him and Vanessa, I hear you, and I there is a part of me that totally wants to see Fisk just absolutely lose his mind, go off the deep end. I think it would be really scary in so many ways, as much as Vanessa's in all of his business in terms of like she's actually, you know, basically his right hand woman. She is the one who is, you know, his true partner. As much as she's in all of that, she's also the one who kind of reins him in a little bit. Like he has this completely unmanaged is not the right word, but like unmanaged ambition. Like when he says that line and where he says, she asks, how many more worlds are we going to conquer? And he says, how many more are there? It's that line that was super interesting to me because someone had actually pointed that out. I guess there was like a preview or maybe one of the actors mentioned it prior to the season coming out. And I think that really just shows like Wilson Fisk knows no limits. If he wants something, he's going to go get it. I mean, we watched him go from, you know, a kid in New York to the kingpin of crime to now the mayor. And he just basically kind of bulldozed his way through all of these different things that, you know, looking at him as a child, you would never think that he would reach these heights. And so Vanessa is kind of that temperament for him. And so I do think that that would be a huge deal to lose her. They are also closer, I think, probably than they've ever been. She's the most involved in everything that he's ever or that he's doing. She's, you know, really, again, being that true partner for him. And I think that would just be, I would love to watch Diona Frio just absolutely go off. The reason that I struggle with it though is because I like Vanessa as a character a lot. And I think her character has gone through so much, especially in season 1 of Born Again specifically. You know, we saw her really own that Mrs. Fisk, Mrs. Kingpin mantle, right? She stood up to her husband and said, you came back and you took all of this from me, but I was running the business and we were more profitable than ever. So we're seeing this new side of Vanessa, this almost newfound confidence. And I love that storyline. And I love that I mean, as messed up as their relationship is, they're actually a really good like unit. And I love kind of seeing her blossom with his support in how she's now stepping into maybe a different role with him. And so my thing is I just didn't want to cut that short because I've loved watching that arc.
No, that's totally fair. As a character, I think she's very interesting. I do think her death to me is kind of that bigger domino.
Yeah.
And will lead to something so much larger that I think I'd rather. It's kind of like when you're weighing the scales, like which one would you rather kind of go with? I would rather kind of see the effect of what would happen. I also think, and this kind of opens the bigger debate of the entire, like, I mean, both episodes, but I think that really the entire show, this has been the debate. This is why Frank and Matt go at it all the time. Kind of that whole, like, the bad guys are willing to always cross all these lines. Obviously, we know Frank as the Punisher is also more than willing to always cross those lines. We know that Bullseye is always willing to cross those lines, no matter who he's working for or who he's deciding to do the dirty work of in that specific episode. So, you know, we have this ongoing debate because then we do have Matt who kind of has that moral compass, supposedly, that he doesn't kill. And I do think what's very interesting is where this kind of opens the floor is this debate once again gets brought up now from Karen. And I think we've talked so extensively going into this show about what it would look like with Karen owning Daredevil. and owning that part of Matt in a way she hasn't before. And now she has to, right? She kind of is playing Mrs. Daredevil. We have Mrs. Fisk. She's playing Mrs. Daredevil out here. And we saw it in these 2 episodes. Not only is she out here kidnapping,
girl,
you know what though? Work. Like I was like, girl, go off.
Karen's leveling up this season.
She is leveling up. But she even sat there and said, when do we start? Because he was like, this isn't what we do. And she's like, when do we?
Yeah.
Because how much further are they allowed to take it? How many more people could they kill? Can they kidnap? Can they screw over? And we're just here and we're just going to injure them. And they get right back up and come back. And we saw it, right? Like we saw a returning member of the anti-vigilante task force. We saw him return during one of the episodes. I don't remember which one. But like he was injured in the finale of last season. He comes back. Like they get back up and they just keep coming. And the one thing Frank made sure never happened was that they got back up. And so I think it is such an interesting debate of like, where is the line and where are they willing to finally just cross it? Because now you have Karen, who's always been, I think, to me, this big moral compass for him, because she always frowned upon Daredevil and that whole concept, because she's that do-gooder, if you will. And I actually really love that they have her wearing, like, I know it's for disguise, but I love the symbolism of her wearing like the dark wig and the dark getup and things like that, because I think it kind of in its own way symbolizes her own dabble into this more darker side of her. And just honestly, when the times call for it, this need to get your hands dirty and start playing just as nasty as the other side, which is something I think, as much as Matt likes to, he doesn't cross that line. I think Karen is not only prepared to, I think she would interestingly be the reason he would.
Yeah, I definitely think that change from her is super interesting. There's a part of me that kind of wants to be like, girl, you've been on this high horse.
I know.
How long? And now
Come
you're like,
on.
well, let's bring in Frank because he kills them. And, they're hunting us. Why can't we hunt them? Karen. Yeah. I'm also fairly certain that at one point last season, I think it's the finale. He wants to go into the Red Hook complex and she says, you will either die or you will kill. So she stops him from going in because she thinks he will kill people. And now she's kind of like, well, I mean, maybe it's not so bad. And like, I understand that now they've been living under this, Safer Streets Act for 6 months. And they haven't really, like, they've made some progress, but things are also getting exponentially worse at the same time. So yeah. I understand that kind of that frustration, that need to maybe try a new tactic. But there is a part of me that's like, if I'm Matt, I'm PO'd because she has shamed me for so long. And now she's like, maybe it's fine. Maybe Frank's method has some, maybe merit.
Now's the time.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, Karen, when do you just get to pick and choose when we're murdering people? Also, funnily enough, you're never the one murdering people, are you? Just a thought. I'm sorry, my frustration with Karen is showing a little bit, but all in all, I think she's a total baddie. There was a part of me that was like, this is a little convenient, Karen.
Yeah. I mean, but to your point, they have been living under this for 6 months.
Yeah.
And she has gone completely under the radar with him.
Yeah.
Off the map, doing what they got to do. And so I get the perspective change. I think it had to happen because you can't live in this world of just like, it's all great and the legal system will work and everything will work itself out. Like it reaches a threshold where it can't. And I think I kind of am happy that she's the one seeing it because I don't think she's wrong. And
I don't necessarily think she's wrong either. And I also think I don't know that Matt would ever come to that conclusion. Or if he did, they'd probably be under this Safer Streets Act for another year before he finally was like, yeah, maybe we call in some people who have some different methods than I do, or I need to change my tactics.
Yeah, because I at the end of the day, this is not working.
Yeah.
And to her exact point, essentially, like, they get right back up. And maybe they don't get right back up, but they get back up eventually and they just come right back to work and they're doing the exact same thing. And I do think, obviously we talked last episode and last season about what, the anti-vigilante task force symbolizes and things of that nature. I think they made it very, very clear during these 2 episodes that task force is doing a whole lot more than, anti-vigilante work.
Yeah.
Go figure. But I think, that once again proves the point of they're just shutting people up who talk
Yeah.
or who they perceive even in 5 seconds as a possible threat to their peace, or anything of that nature, or what they're doing. We see that obviously with is it her aunt?
Yeah, it's Hector's
Angel
wife.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But we see that with that entire scene at the convenience store and what goes down, and the fact she ends up getting taken by the anti-vigilante task force. And so I think when you're seeing all of this as a regular citizen, or in Karen's case, somebody who's already been on the run, who's already been hiding, who's already been under this guise and aware of all this for so much longer, I think you reach a breaking point. I think you get to a point where it's like, what else do they want us to do? Because if we're not going to continue if we can't meet them at 100, and even if we're at 95, they're always going to be 5 above us no matter what. And as long as they are 5 above us, 5 steps ahead, whatever it is, we are not going to win. We are not going to take them out, and we're not going to make real progress the way we want to. That's just how it's going to go.
Yeah, it's always that kind of battle between the hero who wants to win the right way and the villain who doesn't have that moral line, who's just like,
Yeah.
I will win at any cost. It doesn't matter. The ends justify the means. And it is harder to win while keeping your morals intact. And I think that's, if I had to guess, that's probably going to be a theme that I think we're going to explore. Even, obviously something we've explored a lot with Daredevil, but I think with this specific situation, because it is so extreme, I think we're going to see that continue to amp up, and I think Matt's going to inch further and further. Last season we watched him inch further and further returning to Daredevil, right? But I don't think he really got, if I'm remembering, I don't think he got too close to killing anyone. He definitely maimed a number of people. Matt was out there doing his thing, but I don't think he ever was really like, I'm gonna kill this person, and like really felt like that was something. Like, I know in past seasons he's really had that inner debate of like, going into a fight, am I gonna kill this person? And I don't think we really saw a ton of that last season, if I'm remembering correctly. But I think this season that's gonna be more at the forefront, because Karen is now planting that seed, and he seems really steadfast now. But I just wonder if she's gonna wear him down along with this situation. I do want to talk about the convenience, or the bodega scene, because I'm not gonna lie, like, I got a little emotional. I think it was like it was literally like watching the news for a minute there, that I was like, wow, okay, continuing that kind of ripped from the headlines style of representing the storyline there. And there were even flashes in the Fisk parody video where they were showing what the anti-vigilante task force was doing truly, and like not the sanitized version that's going out in the BB report. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you're really seeing the depth of the depravity of how far they've gone away from this, stated mission, which is also bogus, but how much they're just terrorizing people. And to your point,
Yeah.
it's people who are, standing up to them. It's people who are, just going into the bodega to pick up a snack. Like, it's just there's no real safety at this point, because they have taken that away. And I think that's just, it's a powerful representation of some real life experiences, like we've said.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the last conversation in terms of at least the show, just because I think it's Karen who says it towards the end of the episode, but she's like, it might have been Matt, because I think he said it when as Daredevil, but he was like, there are regular people in here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just vigilantes.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point with the symbolism, obviously, supposedly in the parody of all of this, but what we've always been told in our real life of where we're at is it's the criminals and it's the bad people who are illegal and they don't belong here, and they're all doing bad things. But then we're seeing obviously all the people who are not doing anything wrong and are working their jobs and living their lives and doing everything as they should, and they're being just as forcefully taken off the street and everything else. So I think right there is once again that, like, obviously, now again, as people living in the United States at the current moment, that was never lost on us what that was going to symbolize. But if you needed it slapped in your face, that final moment of there are regular people in here, it's not just the vigilantes, is literally meant to say, no, they're taking everybody. It's actually not just about the fact that it's supposedly the criminals. So that's what that is meant to like blatantly tell you. Obviously, not something we needed explaining to, but it's a very powerful symbolic. I mean, it's not even symbolic anymore.
Again, the reflection. They're just
Yeah.
continuing to reflect again and really criticize what's happening,
Yeah.
in the lived experience that America is having, and certain cities are obviously have really experienced this at a degree that most of us can't even imagine and are watching on our televisions. But in this case, it's New York having that experience, but it's also New Yorkers who are banding together and doing what they can to resist. And I think that's something that we've seen, in America with the protests and the different, ways that people are trying to stand up. I think they're doing a really good job of kind of showing the flip side of this experience as well, which is that there are people banding together, working with their neighbors, protecting their neighbors, standing up for others. And so I think that's also like something that I don't want to get lost here, is the kind of community that is building or that is almost strengthened in the face of something so tragic and so awful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean we see that throughout both these episodes as well. I mean, we see it even when are they the detectives or I don't remember police officers. I'm not
Oh,
entirely
the older officers.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Who are protecting Cherry and won't let the anti-vigilante task force in, or even at Rosie's when when they show up and they're saying, "We're let just in case anybody's wondering, Cherry's safe and he's
Yeah.
okay."
Yeah.
And it's like it's stuff like that where you're seeing people protecting each other in the ways that they can and communicate with each other in the ways that they can in these moments, because it's like what else is there to do? You have to be able to band together, and they're calling it the resistance because that's what it is. They're trying to resist what is going on because it's only mounting in front of them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one area of resistance that's been pretty outspoken or that's been pretty obvious is these cut-ins that are the Mayor Fisk parodies. I will say I was pretty surprised that they decided to reveal who that was. I think it was in episode
Same.
2 already.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of sad that it was BB, only because I feel like it was almost too obvious. Like, not, I don't know that either one of us even suggested BB last week. I know I personally didn't, because to me it was just so obvious that I wanted it to be someone
Yeah.
unexpected.
Same.
And I think it speaks a lot to BB's character. Like, we know that she's working with Karen. We know that now she's doing this. It just shows that, even though she's deep on the inside and undercover and doing all these things for the administration right now, she really, like what Finnick says, know who the enemy is. She knows who the enemy is. She's not lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
But I think we could have gotten that with the work that she's doing with Karen without necessarily her also being behind the mask, because I kind of wanted it to be someone. I really wanted it to be someone in the administration who's becoming disillusioned with
Same.
Fisk and his policies.
Same. I actually really wanted it to be her friend.
Yes, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The deputy whatever of communications. I really wanted it to be him.
Yeah.
And I do think, ironically, the creation of this parody in and of itself, and it being an issue that he obviously has to handle, is almost doing it for her. I do think I don't want to say he's getting disenfranchised because I don't think he is, but I do think he's seeing the bigger threat. And he's starting to realize who he got in the cage with.
Yeah.
And so I do think indirectly it's working. But because I mean they have that whole conversation where she even asks, like, you're afraid of him, aren't you? And he tries to play it off and do that, like, oh, look at all this though, and like look, but like you could tell that he's well aware. I mean, even when he was talking to Kingpin, you could tell he had genuine fear. And the thing is at the time he knows nothing about it. He knows about the video, but he knows literally no information. I'm sure, and that's why he went to BB. He had an inkling.
Yeah.
That's why he pretty much warns her to knock it off. because he's like, dude, like this is gonna get us both like screwed. But
Not
I
just
do
screwed,
think,
dead.
yeah,
Dead.
yeah. But I do think they are indirectly doing exactly what I think she kind of wanted, which was to kind of get him to jostle a little bit where he's at. But I really wanted it to be him, and I
Yeah.
really wanted the reveal to come later. The reveal coming so early to me makes me wonder how much longer that storyline is going to be able to persist.
Right. Like, what's next?
Yeah.
Because to your point, that was like, in my head, that was the big mystery, right?
Right.
Who from the inside is getting this information? And now we know that. So the real kind of climax for that now, because the audience knows, but the rest of them don't, is going to be what happens to BB. Sorry, y'all, dry throat. Give me 1 second. So I'll be curious to see, does BB take the rap for this? And Daniel is just like, I warned you, you didn't listen to me, and now now I know it's you. Like, say he gets firm proof that it's her. I know it's you. I'm going to throw you under the bus and save my own skin. Or does it become a situation where he has a small redemption arc where he is, trying to defend her? Because I think we all agree he's trying to protect her when he warns her off. He has the opportunity. He doesn't have proof, but he has a hunch, to what you were saying. He has the opportunity to take that hunch to Fisk and say, hey, BB, who's been doing all of our propaganda, I think it's her. He doesn't. He chooses to go to her and try to get her, to knock it off before anybody gets hurt. I would be interested to see if his redemption arc then is either he continues to protect her and they both get found out, or he, protects her once she's found out and really tries to go to bat for her. Because I do think he genuinely cares about her, but he is so far in this situation that, like, he doesn't know up from down, and he's definitely out of his league. Like, he is a smart dude, you can tell, but he's playing with some very, very big fish, and he's just not ready for that. I think BB, because of what happened with her uncle, she came into this eyes wide open. She was prepared to tussle with someone who she really knew who the character was because of her history, her family history with Kingpin. Daniel, I don't think really understood. He's starting to understand, but I think he's also now just starting to understand how deeply out of his league he is.
Well, yeah, let's not forget he came into this as like an intern.
Yeah.
A political intern. Like, he was there for the campaign.
Yeah.
And so he not only got, and don't get me wrong, he had aspirations and he definitely had a drive and he definitely wanted to get somewhere specifically in this campaign. But to your point, I don't think he had any clue how deep the roots of Kingpin himself are.
Yeah.
And what skeletons he has in his closet and what exactly that looks like. Because I even think about episode 1 when BB first comes over. I think he's having like a party and he's like, yeah, Kingpin helps up, or he said, Mayor Fisk helped set this up for me. And he's like, it's totally legal to, because she tries to be like, isn't that weird with like all, he's like, no, because here's how all this is. I really don't think he ever stepped back and allowed himself to think about who he was tussling with.
Yeah.
And that's why I said what I said. Like, I think he got in that cage and was like, cat. And it was like, hey, lion. Like, yes, but no, like this.
Close,
this
but not quite.
Yeah, like this one will eat you, especially when you run out of food.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't think he's a bad person. And even while working in all this, I still don't think he's corrupted. I think he's following his orders and doing what he has to do, but I think he's doing it from the standpoint of, this is just the mayor and this is what we're doing. But I don't think he's stupid enough to be fully, like, I just don't think he's actually corrupted, because I don't think he's seen the worst of it.
He definitely doesn't know the full depths. I think there is a scene later in the season, because it was in the trailers, where he and the camera angle is up to him and Buck, and it's from a car trunk, and Buck looks at him and I think he says something like, what is it, hacksaw or something else. Basically, they're getting rid of a body. So we know Daniel's gonna truly understand who he's working for. I think right now he knows. he knows, but he's being willfully ignorant because he's never seen anything truly evil.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe
He's
that's
like,
the best way to say that.
yeah, he's like, I know this is wrong. I know this man is a bad man, but I've never actually seen him commit a crime. So I'm just going to choose to stick my head in the sand, be deputy mayor of communications, and try not to like get on his bad side because he genuinely scares me. So I think that's kind of where Daniel's coming from. We know he's going to get, deeper into it. I think that'll be super interesting to see if that. I think Daniel's going to have a redemption arc, is kind of where I'm getting at here. And I think it's once he gets that deep into it and he truly sees like what the mayor's doing and what Buck's true role is in
Well, I don't
the
think he even has the
administration.
stomach for it, if I'm being honest. Like,
No.
I don't think he went into any of this to go down that route.
Right.
And I think that is on purpose why Kingpin, I personally think, is keeping him far enough removed from it as well, because it's like, let's see how much he can handle before we get to what he actually can handle.
Well,
And
I also think there's a part of Fisk that likes the legitimacy that Daniel gives him, because Daniel views him as the political candidate Fisk, views him as Mayor Fisk, but never truly views him as the Kingpin. Everybody else, even Sheila, we know how Sheila feels. Sheila needs to do something about it, but she's getting there. I think she's getting there. But Sheila knows. She knows who she's working for. I think Daniel has never made Fisk feel that way, so he's like trying to keep him out of it. And I think there is this like almost paternal feeling for Daniel, like we've talked about in the past. He sees himself in him. And there's a line that Buck says in one of the episodes this week where he calls him the potential heir apparent, right? So this idea that Daniel might inherit one day what Kingpin has built, but I don't think he necessarily wants those I don't think Kingpin necessarily wants those rose-colored glasses removed quite yet, because he knows Daniel's going to look at him differently as soon as he like takes a look at the rest of the iceberg that's below the water.
Yeah, they have a very interesting relationship, and it's been very interesting to me to see it play out. I do wonder, just for out of my own curiosity, if the body in the back is BB.
Oh my god, that to kill both Uriks is kind of insane.
But I'm also thinking maybe she's not dead yet, but that's his test. Because why is he getting brought in now?
Good question. What is the catalyst to bring him in further?
Yeah. Why bring him in directly into that kind of part, or that part of this business, if you will, if there's not a reason to? I think he needs to test his loyalty. And I think that's essentially what he was saying during this episode. Like, you are loyal to me, right? Don't ever let me think you're not. And so I do wonder if that's kind of almost an initiation.
Can I go off of that theory and give it like a sub bullet B?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's gonna protect BB by nominating someone else who is not like truly the person behind the mask, and that's whose body it is, and he's gonna have to live with knowing that he got an innocent person killed.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're gonna kill BB. I think that's just like,
no.
I mean, with her family history, I think that's so sad.
And not inherently like, she might not be dead, and then she could still escape or whatever else. But I like that theory. Either way, I think that's why he is brought in. That is the through line as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I actually find his character super interesting. Like, I think he's such a fascinating one to watch, from the beginning of where he starts to kind of where we are, even just now, and knowing he's probably going to have so much more to go. He's one that I think, he kind of represents people who kind of slowly descend, I think, into, believing in something that's not right and kind of having to wake up and realize. I think Sheila represents something more like kind of knowing and needing the guts to maybe like act on it, whereas like Daniel is like trusting your gut and then, recognizing and being willing to look beyond the willful ignorance and recognize what the situation for what it truly is. So I think both of their characters are like, as for side characters, I think actually super interesting arcs because of kind of what they represent in terms of like authoritarian governments and things like that.
Yeah, and I think his is interesting because, like I said, his is that progression. Starts off innocently, starts off ignoring the small things, and then, slowly it kind of starts to descend into full belief into what this person has to offer and everything else. And eventually it's just blindly following.
Yeah.
And also in this case, especially, he has the power to completely just, you're done. And by you're done, you're dead.
Yeah. You are now in the East River with the blown up boat.
Yes. Yeah. Which was I will say, was a crazy way to end the third episode. Now, did I see it coming? Yeah, of course. Because they had that conversation in episode 1.
I also I feel like I'm like critical of Matt and Karen today, and I don't mean it to come across that way. But when they were shocked that he killed those men, I was like, y'all have been fighting this man for years. Do you really think that this was not what he was going to do? Like, let's think about this, right? I just couldn't. I understand being shocked in the moment into terms of like you see something awful and you literally go into shock. But in terms of being surprised by King, y'all, I'm struggling. But in terms of I swallowed water down the wrong pipe a few minutes ago, and I have been just like
I just did the same thing. I literally
fighting
was like,
for my life. But in terms of Kingpin's character, this is very much in line. This is not a departure of who he is. This is, no strings left. This is also Mr. Charles's advice, which was, hey, make sure there's no witnesses. Get your people who you trust. And, if you want to spare them, that's fine. But you got to get somebody who's, and I'll quote here, expendable, who can do the other work.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. So it was, to your point, it wasn't surprising. It was more just like the shock value of like, he did that. He killed all those people. That's terrible. And also he just blew up a boat in the river, which is like, you're in New York. You just blew something up in the East River. That's like insane.
Yeah.
He's getting all this pressure from the governor already. And he decided now's a good time to blow something up in the East River. Like, man's not a politician. You can tell.
No, and you can also tell that heat is on him. And here's the thing, that if I could say anything to Kingpin, let me grab my mic. If I could say anything to Kingpin, it fully would be, hey, running, your crime little scene where you literally get the name of Kingpin and everything else, it is not the same as being a politician.
No, you can't just murder your way through.
Correct.
You can try.
And I think here's the thing. He's learning that. And here's the other thing. You are mayor of New York City. You're
probably
not even
the most
governor.
Visible mayor in
but
the United
you're not
States.
even the governor of the state.
Yeah.
And you're certainly not the president or a sitting member of the Senate or Congress or anything of that nature. So, yes, you are an elected official. Yes, your decisions are genuinely affecting people. And yes, you are the mayor of the biggest city in the United States. However, you have oversight. Like, you're not. I just think about like Ava from Abbott Elementary when they're like, Ava, you have bosses, and she's like, point to them. That's how he thinks. Like, he's like, where? And then like the governor of New York's there, and he's like, oh yeah, that's
and
my
they're
boss.
doing all this opposition research to try to get her like out of the way, and they're like, darn, she's squeaky clean. Like, yeah, no shoes. She's been doing this a while.
She's a career politician.
Yeah.
And like, it's her job. And also, you don't get to just do whatever you want to do in your city. She still oversees you to a degree. She is governor of the state, which includes the city. Like, the city is, in fact, part of the state. So, like, I think what's so interesting is we are kind of seeing this weird struggle start for him, where he's starting to realize, like, oh, I can't just do whatever I want, actually.
Yeah.
I could as a crime lord because it was all criminal activity. But like, I can't just run the city however I want. I can't just be doing whatever. And I'd love to see what the effects of this boat being blown up in the middle of the river does. Because as much as he's going to try and blame it on, I'm sure, Daredevil or anybody else, you also had a prison break at the exact same time. And I'm like, buddy, none of these look good for you. And I know what he's trying to do. I understand the angle, but from the perspective of a governor who's, again, overseeing you, buddy. Like you're not just on free will able to do like, I just want to do this today. No, like you still have to like have some confines. Like you're not, I mean, theoretically, guys, the president of the United States is supposed to have, rules and checks and balances and things of that nature.
That's how it was designed.
It was designed that way. Obviously, we as of recently have not been witnessing that almost at all. But it is originally designed for that to happen because we are not meant to have kings. That was kind of the whole point of leaving, the UK. Well, England specifically. But either way, in a normal world, even if he was the president of the United States, he technically wouldn't be able to be doing all of this anyway. But in this grand scheme, he is this little mayor of New York City. You do have oversight, and I think that is going to cause quite the struggle for him, that he can't just you can't run the city like it's your crime operation, buddy. Like it doesn't work like that.
You know what's so funny? I was gonna say his next solution to the problem is, well, I just need to be president.
Girl, when he was like, what's next? I was like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. And then he was like talking about, what do you think we can do internationally? And I was like, I'm stressed.
I was like, sir, are you aware there's a lot of countries out there? You can't just like do what you want, do whatever. They all have their own governments and leaders. And the irony of that is you have so many different types of governments and leaders. You will never be able to properly take over the world.
Honestly, you know what I think this is really showing is like a level of delusion in Kingpin that I don't think we've seen thus far. Like, I think in past seasons, he's been focused, but he's been pragmatic. He's logical. He understands, not to say he never gets emotional. He definitely does. But he kind of understands the world in which he's working within. I think this level of Kingpin, or where we are with Kingpin right now, he is just completely like, the power has gone to his head to the point where he is not thinking clearly about what his moves are, how to think strategically. To your point, he's getting pressure from the governor. He's getting pressure from the CIA because they're doing all kinds of shady dealings with him. And we'll talk about that in a second. But, he's getting pressure from Daredevil. Now he's got a prison break. There's a lot of stuff going on. And he's literally stretched himself too thin. But at the same time, he's like, dang, why are there people who are telling me what I can and can't do? I think I'm going to need more. And it's like, dude, you're just like not living in reality.
No, and I think that comes from when your entire career is being a crime, like, or just being in crime.
Yeah.
And rising in the ranks of all of that. There's a level of delusion because, you can rise in the ranks because you're doing everything illegally.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
He was
like
the boss. Here. So
yeah.
His word was law. And here,
right,
to some extent, he's been able to do that because he also, is threatening the city council. And, so he's been able to like, do some things that would be challenging for someone who's trying to do it the right way.
Right.
But to what you've been saying and you emphasized, he still has oversight beyond that. And he is used to being like, I am the king, I wear the crown, like it is what I'm going to do is, or what I say goes. And he doesn't have anybody that he's answering to above him, and now he does. And now he's like, wait, I voluntarily signed up to have a boss? Like, yeah, dude, you could have just ran the port, which is still a free port, regardless of whether or not you're mayor. You got shot in the head, and then you had a delusion about being mayor, and now you're like, crap, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, because you had a traumatic response to being shot in the head by a girl you thought of as your daughter, even though you're responsible for her father's death. So, like, this is
Correct.
all a problem of your own making. Actions have consequences. I love you and I think you're a great character, but, like, this is where we are. You made your bed, you're lying in it.
Yes, correct. Yeah. I do want to briefly, and when I say briefly, I mean oh so briefly, because I'm going to go off. I want to briefly talk about, you talked about the CIA. You said we're going to talk about this in a second. We're going to talk about it now.
The timeline.
Yeah. So, guys, I'm actually almost 100% sure there's probably at least 2 to 3 times on a recording somewhere you will have heard me say, well, first, there's multiple times I definitely went, where does the Thunderbolts fit in the timeline when it comes to New York because of everything going on in New York at the current moment?
Yeah.
And then the 2 to 3 times of me going, it wouldn't make sense for it to fall, during the time of all this with Mayor Fisk, because how does all of that happen? And nothing, and yet we're not gonna acknowledge, the whole anti-vigilante thing, because let's be real, okay, they're not really, okay, well, some of them wear masks, but like beyond the point, there's like a whole lot of other stuff going on. It just wouldn't make sense to have the Thunderbolts fall during this period of time and then it not reference it at all.
Yeah.
Well, so then Marvel said, I hate you. And I took that personally, actually, because why?
Yeah. So let's give a little context here to what you're reacting to specifically.
Give up.
Marvel recently released a timeline that basically puts the Thunderbolts film smack dab in the middle between season 1 and season 2. So as we referenced earlier in the episode, we know that there's 6 months in between Daredevil Born Again season 1 and Daredevil Born Again season 2, which I don't know that I feel like 6 months have passed, but that's okay. Either way,
that's the least of the
that's
problems.
Like the smallest
right
problem. I get it,
Yeah.
but whatever, it's fine. And so somewhere in that 6-month period, the whole thing with the Thunderbolts happens. Void goes and does his thing in New York. The Avengers are there. Valentina is there.
What?
And that all happens while Fisk is in office, and specifically not just while he's in office, but specifically while his safer streets and anti-vigilante policies are in place.
Yes. And not even just that, I kind of just want to point out to everybody, the Thunderbolts are in Avengers Tower in New York.
Well. If we're going to suspend disbelief here, we could say that they're like out
not physically
doing
in the tower. Okay, regardless, so they're working out of the tower.
I don't
rebought.
I don't disagree. And here's the thing. Here's where I'm getting like so mega stuck is like even the Netflix shows, and I was reading an article that pointed this out too. Even the Netflix shows did a better job of referencing big moments. Like the Netflix shows, I'm thinking specifically about season 1 of Daredevil, but they called it like the incident, and you saw all these newspapers. I think it was actually in Ben Urich's office or his boss's office. They were like the incident, attack on New York or whatever, but they still referenced it. You could tell where in time it happened because they were like, oh, remember when that happened? And they would like, talk about it. But like, and I get that there's a lot going on. I get that the mayor of New York is literally declaring war on the citizens of New York, and that's a big deal. I'm not going to say that's not a big deal. However, is he a cosmic being? Unclear. Void devoured people and put them in their own personal hellscape prisons while he did so. So the city is like traumatized, then multiplied their trauma and was like, yes, extra trauma with a side of trauma right now.
See,
and nobody's talking about it.
Where I'm stuck is from the opposite direction a little bit, because all of that happened. You have what, 6 7.
Are you trying to count the number of new Avengers?
No, I was trying not to make the stupid 6-7 joke, but I was like, dang, I already said it.
I have made this bet.
I was like, no, God. But like, you already have a couple of. They're living in New York City.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I kind of have to take the step back. And then when you look at it from the Daredevil perspective, I'm like, so we don't like Daredevil. We know why. We don't like Bullseye. We know why.
Yeah, there's some history.
There's some history.
Just like a lot of history.
Last season made a reference to Spider-Man. Don't like him.
Yeah,
right?
he's beefing.
Yeah, he's beefing. Haven't heard about him yet this season, but, beefing.
There's time.
There's time. But I'm like, so there's just like whole Avengers.
And some mega powered individuals.
People like Bucky Barnes. And you're going to sit here and tell me Bucky's like, I'm just going to kick back and let it
Bucky
happen.
Barnes.
Even if he's not still congressman, you're going to tell me this man who fought in World War II
next to
and whose best friend was Captain America, Steve Rogers,
and his current best friend is
Captain America.
Captain America.
Well, they're
Sam
on the outs right now. They are on the outs right now. But regardless,
well, still,
you're gonna look at me and tell me that he's gonna sit up in that tower and let this man, especially, mind you guys, from Brooklyn.
Yeah, born and raised.
Yeah, in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
and he's gonna sit back and be like, yeah, he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah, look, I hate to utter these words because I actually think I might get sick. But
oh no.
But
scared.
Time's about to get warped. And we know that at the end of the Thunderbolts film that they are seeing the Fantastic Four. So we're leading into Doomsday. So they might not even be in this universe. In this period.
I would rather you tell me that than have to justify why they're in New York and not doing anything about any of this.
Yeah. I have to think that, like, because think about it this way. At the I would actually say 70 to 80% of the film, they're like traveling. They are fighting each other. They're in the desert. Like, they don't actually come to New York until maybe like 60% of the way through the film, and then they have the big battle, right? And then they, that's their base, right? And then it's unclear. I don't know if anybody has mentioned the amount of time between the end of the film and that end credit scene where I
feel like we do know it, but I'm not remembering it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was not like immediate because they were fighting with Sam, and like that clearly couldn't have been like 3 hours later. But
yeah,
imagining that like they're coming off of this experience, they're having these issues about naming rights with the Avengers, and then they're
New York's in a military state, but I'm the Avengers. No, I'm the Avengers.
Let's talk about naming semantics instead. But they're preoccupied. We can talk about their prioritization at another time. And then they see this ship, and depending on, how they wrap that into Doomsday and like all that, they could very rapidly be either off planet, off universe. They could be in a whole different time, which may or may not also be a different universe. I don't know how that works. I'm not sure.
That. Just don't even go there.
Nope. This is why I said I almost got violently ill.
Nope.
So that's the only thing where I can say, like, maybe for the beginning of, what was happening, that was kind of concurrent in New York with Mayor Fisk. That was kind of concurrently happening while they were not in New York, whatever. And then maybe they haven't actually spent a lot of time in New York, is my point, for them to be like, oh my gosh, City is having issues. We must help City, where they're like doing other things.
Which is fair, but then I'm like, from the other side of it not being mentioned that there are Avengers based out of New York City, but he has the Safer Streets Act with the whole vigilantism and all that stuff.
Can I be honest and not very nice to Mayor Fisk? I think he knows who he can take, and he knows it's the street level folks, and he cannot take on the Avengers.
I also think that's the value of Mr. Charles, and we just haven't gotten there yet.
Also true, because obviously the Valentina connection, she might be like I'll keep my guys away from you if you stay away from my guys
That's
because
what I
they're
mean.
my salvation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's
That
fair.
there's a value in Mr. Charles is kind of doing her version of the dirty work. He's this is maybe not the best comparison, but he's kind of her Buck.
Yeah.
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 And so it's kind of like, he's just making sure that Kingpin knows his place and Valentina will keep hers and her side will stay where her side stays and vice versa.
Like, let's have a symbiotic relationship and,
Yeah.
keep each other out of trouble. I think that's a very good point as well.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see one, Matthew Lillard back. I don't think we've seen the last of him. I mean, King. But two, how much tighter we're going to get in some of these connections, because I know there's been a lot of conversation about how tied into some of the wider universe these shows are going to be. And I'm liking the level of connection that we've had in season 2 so
same.
far. I do think that that's one area that, because of some of this weird timeline shenanigans that they're pulling, I would like them to flesh out a little bit more. Do I think they will? No, because they don't like to give us definitive answers on anything. And then they're like, oh no, we've painted ourselves into a corner. Like, yeah, of course you have. We've thought of everything. We're the fans.
Yeah.
But anyway, I hope that, we get a little bit more there. I think we're at the very least going to understand a little bit more about what Valentina has her hands in on the illegal side, even if it doesn't necessarily address the new Avengers of it all.
No, I agree. And I mean, one, obviously I want to see Matthew Lillard reappear. I went 2 episodes without him. Offended.
Simply unfair.
Listen, he's one of the first husbands of horror, and we are blessed enough to have him now in the MCU. So why is he not in every single episode? Don't know.
Also Shaggy, like, icon.
Yeah, but he's one of the first husbands of horror. Like, come on, let's really talk about it. That's where that's his role. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him come back and play whatever his role needs to be, especially knowing his connection to Valentina and knowing kind of what that could entail. So I'm just kind of waiting, and it makes me happy that they kind of gave that to us in the first episode, because now that we know the timeline, I'm like, okay, so they thought about this a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
They thought about it enough to have been like, clearly we need a connection here. Because I think we actually did talk about that in the first season. So maybe not in the first season, but when we were talking about the Thunderbolts, I know we did, because it came out right on the tail of all of this.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know if the show had wrapped yet.
There might have been.
They might have overlapped. It was either
slightly. Like one episode of overlap. Oh no, I think that's why they doubled up those episodes. Remember how we were talking about that?
It was something.
It was like
it was
the next week,
weird.
I think.
Yeah, they were very close to each other.
Yeah.
So either way, to me, I'm like, all right, you saw it coming. I'm glad that we kind of maybe addressed it in episode 1. Let's actually address it a little further now that you've confirmed this timeline.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I honestly, can I just say, I know you were heated about it. I too was heated about it when they first
I'm still
announced
heated about it.
Okay, well, I have to say, I guess I'll just speak for myself then, because you feel differently. Having talked it through, I feel a little bit better, and I will feel exponentially better if it gets even just like a throwaway line here or there, or something that Mr. Charles has alluded to like smooth this all over. But I don't feel as like rigidly angry as I did when I first heard the news.
I still do, primarily because a lot of it is like, well, they could be off world. They could be in a different place. They could be all that. It's like, okay, but if we take it at the base level, if they're in New York, it makes no sense.
Right, but there's also, again, 5 episodes to maybe smooth things over. I guess what I'm trying to say is, because they have addressed this timeline issue so clearly, and they have said, like, this is where it goes on the timeline, I feel like they are aware that fans are clamoring for something more definitive. And to your point, adding Mr. Charles in, adding the Valentina name drop, like, all of these things maybe show a little bit more awareness to the concrete updates that we need and have been like scrambling for 2.5 phases now, that I, for once, am giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not willing to throw in the towel yet.
You do that.
That's fair. I'm usually the cynic, so today I am coming at you with a very positive outlook. But, catch me next week and I might be like, why? You never know. I'm hulking out on the mic. I'm not sure.
Oh God. Okay.
No, I don't really want to buy a new one, so I definitely won't. But like, I'll kick it some air, maybe. Frustratedly.
We just cut because it's camera. We just cut to her behind, just like.
And it has to be silent so that you can't hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, she'll be muted. No, we'll add some music on the backtrack. That'll be.
Spider-Man.
That is not the song to play during that. Oh God.
On theme though. Anyway, we have clearly devolved into hysterics. So at this point, I think it's time to call it for episodes 2 and 3. We'll be back next week with episode 4, hopefully with some more great topics to cover because, you know, even though we said we didn't remember episodes 2 and 3, it turns out there was a lot to talk about. We will be back next week. Make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice. You can also check out the website, which is linked below, as well as our Buy Me a Coffee if you are so inclined to support the show.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are also linked in the show notes down below. And as T said, we'll be back next week with episode 4 of Daredevil Born Again, season 2. Make sure you guys are keeping up with the show and with us as Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.